Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about World War One, and it's called a world war because many countries in the entire world were fighting in it. We're just going to talk about some of the major ones. But this war, I mean, just looking at these photos, it was a very brutal war. Lots of people died, and it was very primitive in some ways as well. So World War One started in 1914 in Europe, and it was the Central Powers, which was Germany and Austria-Hungary, and they fought against what's called the Allies, and that's Britain, France, and Russia. These There was more countries involved. These were just some of the big ones, but they were fighting each other. Germany and Austria were fighting against Britain, France, and Russia. Now we're going to talk about U.S. involvement in World War One. At the beginning of World War One, the United States remained neutral, and that means they didn't support a side. The United States didn't want to get involved; they didn't want to fight, and lots of Americans supported isolationism, and that means they wanted to be isolated and not get involved in the war. So the U.S. was just saying, "Europe, okay, you guys fight each other. We're not going to help. We're not going to fight. We're not going to do anything." However, that slowly changes. The U.S. enters the war in 1917 after repeated German submarine warfare. Uh, so submarines, it's not quite a boat because they go underneath water, but they were attacking U.S. boats. Germany kept attacking boats. Germany bombed and sank a boat named the RMS passenger liner Lusitania, and there was 1,198 people that died, including 128 Americans. And this is the Lusitania right here. And the thing was, it's a passenger line. That means it's not an army boat, it's not a navy. It was just regular people going about their business, and they sank the boat, and it killed a lot of people, including 128 Americans. So the U.S. is mad that Germany's submarines are attacking boats. U.S. is mad that Germany sank Lusitania. And the U.S. also had close ties with England. Remember, England's part of the Allies. England's fighting Germany. And at this time, the US and England, they get along with each other. So the US, starts wanting to help England. And the last reason why the US enters the war, it was because of something called the Zimmerman telegram. Sometimes you might see it called the Zimmerman note, but essentially Germany sent a note to Mexico saying if they attacked the United States, they would help them and give them land. So Germany wanted Mexico to fight the United States, which the U.S. was not happy about. So when the U.S. entered the war, American President Woodrow Wilson said that we need to make the world safe for democracy, which is what the United States is. Our government's a democracy. And Wilson said we need to make the world safe for democracy. So the U.S. was not in the war when it started, but they are now in the war. And World War One ends. America's strong military resources and soldiers helped the Allies, which England, France, Russia, defeat the Central Powers, which is Germany and Austria-Hungary, and the war ends in 1918. So the U.S. joined the war in 1917 and ended a year later. The U.S. really helped the war come to an end. And World War One is one of the worst wars in history, with over 17 million people who died and over 20 million people were injured. And the total cost of the war was over $180 billion. So wars are very expensive. And $108 billion back then was a lot more. And over 17 million people died, over 20 million injured. One thing, Europe was completely destroyed in certain parts. This shows some of the photos, but there was a lot of bombs that were dropped. You can just see these cities. You can't even recognize them. They're destroyed. They had to be rebuilt. And after the war, President Woodrow Wilson, he wanted to make what's called a 14-point plan. And in this plan, he wanted to eliminate the causes of World War One. And there are three main points of his plan. There's something called self-determination, which this is where countries decide their own statehood and allegiances. So countries decide where they want to be. Freedom of the seas. This says boats are allowed to travel on the sea wherever they want, like the Lusitania or some of the U.S. boats that got sank by German submarines. He's saying boats should be able to travel, they should not be attacked. And then he wanted to create what's called the League of Nations, which would have been a group of nations that make decisions in order to prevent war. And after the war, there was something called the Treaty of Versailles. And after the war, France and England wanted to punish Germany. And when the League of Nations was created, they changed the boundaries of several countries, and many new countries were born. For instance, Austria-Hungary doesn't exist. There was another country called the Ottoman Empire that they split up, and Germany had to give up land as well. The Mandate system was created in the Middle East, and this said Austria-Hungary had to give up territories in the Middle East. So the Mandate system had to do with the Middle East. And Germany had to pay $63 billion because they were blamed for the war. So Germany is being punished a lot for World War I for this Treaty of Versailles. This is a Europe before the war and after. And if you look, you look at Germany, they took away a lot of land from Germany. It became Poland after the war. That added some new territory here. Austria-Hungary was one big country, but now Austria is its own country, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia. They took away a lot. Romania got smaller. So as you can tell, there was a lot of change because of the Treaty of Versailles, which leads to problems later on. Eventually, there's going to be another war called World War II. And the League of Nations, many people debated if the United States should or should not join the League of Nations. President Woodrow Wilson, he wanted to create the League of Nations. He wanted the U.S. to be in it. But many American senators objected. They did not like the League of Nations because they did not want people from other countries making decisions for them. And eventually, the United States senators did not approve of the Treaty of Versailles, which led to the United States not joining the League of Nations. So America didn't agree with the Treaty of Versailles. They thought they were punishing Germany too much, that it was over harsh, they didn't be a little more forgiving. And eventually the United States, because of this, they did not join the League of Nations. U.S. senators did not approve it. All right, that's it for World War I. If you guys have any questions, make sure to let me know.